been trying to get better at uploading more videos throughout the week, just so you guys have more content to watch. So for those that are subscribed to me and do follow me on Instagram and here and everything, I do appreciate it. It means a lot to me. So I'm just gonna keep on making videos for you guys to watch, and hopefully you guys like them. So that being said, in today's video we're going to talk about a little bit of a controversial subject, and basically we'll discuss the pros and cons of feeding frozen versus live. There's pros to each, there's cons to each, and then I'll throw in my personal opinion and what I do for my snakes and what works for me. So I'll start off basically with feeding live, and we'll start off with the pros. One of the biggest pros is for feeding live is natural behavior for the snake. Most people argue that they get to hunt and kill their prey as they would in the wild, which is fine, it's understandable. Another pro would be the nutrient factor. A lot of people believe that live snakes have more of a nutrient factor than frozen, which is true to an extent, and I'll cover that in a minute. Cons to feeding live, though, are basically feeding live cost effective can be a little bit expensive. Live rodents are generally pretty expensive in the store. Depending on what you're feeding, you're paying upwards of like $4, $5, $7, $8 for one rodent. Not to mention, if your snake doesn't eat, then you're just stuck with this pet rodent until the next time you decide to feed or whatever you decide to do with it. Another thing would be is you can't buy in bulk, which I guess kind of goes with what I just said, so we'll skip over that. Another thing that you have to worry about that is probably one of the biggest concerns in the reptile community is the rodent basically attacking your snake or defending themselves. If you are a rodent and you see this predator coming at you and they want to eat you, you're definitely going to want to try and defend yourself. So there are some pictures, some things out there on the internet where some of the damage is pretty bad. It results in a lot of infections and stuff like that. So that's definitely something you want to look out for if you are considering feeding live. Even if you monitor your snake, let's say the snake bites the rear end of the rodent can then turn around and bite your snake, which can result in a very, very bad infection for the snake. Even if the snake kills it and still eats it, you still then have to worry about the snake, and most snakes are not going to be happy when they're agitated. So if you have a snake that has this infection and it doesn't want to be touched, it's going to be a pretty pissed off snake and not want you near it. So that's something you probably don't want to deal with. And so with that being said, we'll talk about frozen. Frozen is what I do. I do frozen for my snakes. So I'll start off with the cons for that. Simply, it's just a lot easier. I get to basically feed all of my snakes. I can, get them in bulk. I have 6 snakes, so I can buy upwards to like 100, 150 different, rodents, and I'm not paying really a lot, and then that's, one supply on end. So definitely easier, definitely better for, cost and cost-wise and everything like that. And another pro for feeding frozen is obviously you don't have to worry about the rodent attacking your snake, which is something I feel reptile keepers should definitely take into consideration. If you are buying a pet, any pet but reptile, if you're buying a reptile, you should definitely consider and think about your pet's overall health. If you're spending money on this animal and you want to do everything you can to make sure this animal survives, you can't focus on what's done in the wild. These are captive animals. So our job as captive, reptile keepers is to remove some of those obstacles that they would deal with in the wild. A ball python, yes, they may eat, live in the wild. However, this is a captive ball python, so they're not missing meals. They're not having to go hunt for their meal. They have a perfect feeding regimen that we're giving them, so it kind of eliminates some of that trouble for them. So I feel like the whole, it's done in the wild argument is kind of invalid for certain things. We can't necessarily base it off of that, since these are captive bred animals. Ball pythons are native to Africa, but if they're captive bred, they haven't actually experienced those native environments, those actual temperatures and everything. So feel like that's definitely something to keep in mind. So cons to feeding, well, one more pro to feeding frozen is when you freeze, the rodents, it kind of stops any parasites or anything like that. So that's a good thing. And then, like I said, you always have food on hand. And then if the snake doesn't eat, you don't have just this live rodent, in your house, and you don't know what to do with it. So it's a lot more convenient, especially for you and the snake. You don't have to. First of all, it's more cost effective. You don't have to worry about the rodent attacking your snake, and it just makes it an easier process for everything to happen. So, with my experience, I would say there are a few cons to feeding frozen, which there's cons to everything, right? I feel like one of my biggest cons is having to actually warm up the rodent. It's not a hard job, but when you have multiple snakes, it does become tedious. So you have to, get your water ready. Make sure the water is to the right temperature, because if you make it too hot, then the rodent will, burst from the inside, and then you got a mess, and it's just disgusting. And then if it's too wet, you gotta dry it off. I know with me, if I thaw my rodents in plastic, sometimes they won't thaw all the way through, and then I have to go back and rethaw them. So it's just like, it can be a hassle, but I would much rather deal with that hassle than to deal with the possibility of my snake being injured by, a rodent. So that's definitely something I consider. Just kind of look at both sides and pick the lesser of two evils, so to speak. So it really is personal preference. Me, I definitely believe more so in feeding frozen, because, like I said, it's just overall healthy for the animal. It's better on your pockets, and there's just a lot of things that you won't have to worry about as much. You won't have to nose addiction. You won't have to sit there and basically babysit the snake as it eats it and wonder if your snake got bit or just anything of that nature. It just makes it a lot less draining and worrisome process. So that's something I look at across the board for all of my reptiles. I look at both sides of everything before I kind of make my decision. And not bashing anybody that does do live. It's just, for me, I feel like it's easier to feed the frozen versus to feed the live. I have done live. My blood python and my ball python, when I actually got them, were only eating live, so I converted them to frozen as quick as I can, because it's just a lot easier. And Kato, my blood python, he's getting pretty big. He's a pretty big guy. He's growing. So obviously, as he's growing, his food size is growing, and with him being on small rats, that becomes more of an issue. Mice, I'm not saying they wouldn't attack your snake, but that's not as big an issue as a rat attacking your snake. So it's definitely something to consider. Definitely something to think about. But like I said, for me, frozen, there are some cases where some snakes just will not take frozen, and that's perfectly fine. But you definitely have to monitor your snakes. There are ways around it. Some people do pre-kill, which is where they get the rat, mouse, and they'll kill it however they see fit. I'm not going to go into that because everybody has different methods. But they'll basically kill it how they see fit. But that way, the rat still has the fresh scent. It's still a fresh rat. It still has, all of the nutrients. Because there are some people who firmly believe that the frozen versus the live, when you freeze the mouse, the rodent, that it loses a lot of nutrients, which isn't the case. If that was the case, then you'd see a lot more snakes with, health issues or whatever. But everyone's different. It's definitely opinionated. That's why it's such a controversial topic. But I definitely am a heavy supporter in feeding live. I care more so about the welfare of the animals. I'm not doing, to feed a snake live just because you want to see something die is completely probably the dumbest thing I've ever heard. If that's the reason you have a snake, then you should not have a snake. That's dumb. That's like saying, I feed my dog, rabbits because they're technically wolves and I want to see something. That's stupid. their own. I definitely believe as long as the snake is healthy and you can keep the snake from being attacked if you're feeding live, then kudos to you. But I definitely just don't want to have to worry about my snake being attacked in general. So that's really all I have to say about that. I mean, it's a fairly short video. It's either you do this or you do that type of deal. So drop a comment down below and let me know what you think. Let me know what you do for your snakes and how it works out for you. Definitely subscribe. Definitely, drop a like on the video. And thank you to all of those that are subscribed to me, and I appreciate you for watching.